The easiest way to misunderstand model L is to think it simply doubles model A. Model A has 8 functions. Model L has 16. That is true, but it is not the main point. The deeper shift is from position to coordinate. In Model A, a function is read primarily by its place in an 8-position hierarchy: leading, creative, vulnerable, suggestive, and so on. In Model L, a function is read as a coordinate in a generated field. It still has a fixed place, but that place now has direction, opposition, adjacency, and relation to the axes that produce it. So the question is no longer only which element occupies this slot. The question becomes, where does this function stand in the whole information field? That is the difference this video is about. Model A works because its positions are invariant. The leading function is not merely first. The creative function is not merely second. Each position has a stable structural role across all 16 types. That is the strength of Model A, but it is also the compression point. Each position carries more structure than the 8-position layout can visibly display. Strength, valuation, mentality, contact, boldness, situationality, and several reigning correspondences at once. So the issue is not that Model A is false. The issue is that Model A is dense. Model L begins from that density and asks what happens when the hidden distinctions inside each position are unfolded. In Model A function is usually read as a slot occupied by an information element: leading TI, creative NE, vulnerable SE, suggestive FE. That works, but it hides a question. What kind of TI, what kind of NE, what kind of SE, what kind of FE? Model A tends to treat the element as if it arrives whole. Model L asks whether the element is already internally differentiated, so the shift is not simply from 8 functions to 16 functions. It is from a function as an occupied slot to a function as a generated term, produced by element, modifier, coordinate, and field relation. A slot has a role, a coordinate has relations. That is the decisive shift. In Model L, a function is not identified only by what it is or by where it sits in a hierarchy. It is identified by the axes that generate it. It has an ordinal position, it has an element, it has a modifier, it has neighboring coordinates, it has oppositions across the field. It belongs to several tetrachotomies at once. So the function is no longer just an item placed inside a box. It is a point of intersection. And once we read it as an intersection, the structure becomes less like a stack and more like a field. This is why saying B1 is always B1 is both true and incomplete. The coordinate is invariant, but the content generated at that coordinate depends on the type's whole field. For the LII, B1 is TI with a sensing modifier. For the ESE, B1 is FE with an intuitive modifier. For the SLE, B1 is NE with a logical modifier, so B1 is not changing its rule from type to type. What changes is the material produced there once the type's A field is set. Model A already has this principle in simpler form. The creative function is always creative, but it may be NE, SI, TI, or another element. Model L extends that logic. The coordinate remains fixed. The generated function becomes field relative. But field relative does not mean arbitrary, and vector does not mean asymmetrical. A vector is not a ranking. It is not a one-way advantage. It is not one type dominating another. It is an orientation inside a structure. Introversion and extroversion are already vector-like. Static and dynamic are vector-like. Process and result are vector-like. Socionics has always contained directional oppositions. Model L's claim is not that direction suddenly appears. The claim is that these directions intersect. Once 2 axes cross, a dichotomy is no longer just a line between opposites. It becomes a field of 4 positions. That is where the tetrachotomy begins. A dichotomy gives a line. It divides the socion in 2. That is powerful, but it is still only a polarity. Model L asks what happens when 2 such polarities are crossed. Foreground and background is one axis. Facile and resistant is another. cross them, and strong versus weak is no longer just a binary. It unfolds into capacity, preeminent, auxiliary, contributive, and inferior. That is the pattern behind the whole sequence. One model A bridge is compressed. Two reigning correspondences generate two axes, those axes cross, and the result is not another label, it is a four-part field. So the distinction is not model A is isomorphic, model L is vectorial. That is too crude. Model A is already structurally invariant. Model L remains structurally invariant. The difference is the unit of analysis. Model A gives us functional positions, Model L gives us functional coordinates. A position tells us the role of a function in the stack. A coordinate tells us where that function stands in the whole information field, its axes, its oppositions, its neighbors, its transformations, and its tetrachotomic memberships. So Model L does not discard Model A. It unfolds what Model A compresses. Model A gives the slots, Model L keeps the slots, doubles the field, and shows the directions running through it.